Hi everyone. It's kind of a sad ending to chapter 3. I wonder what the kids are up to now. So won't you join me now for chapter 4 and 5 of Tuesdays at the Castle by Jessica Day George. Chapter 4. Bandits in the pass, Sergeant Avery explained. They had all stumbled into the throne room, dismissed the petitioners, and summoned the council instead. Avery slumped in a chair, but Rolfe refused to sit on the throne. He'd sat in it all day with ease, but now Seeley noticed that he couldn't even look at it. Avery kept trying to rise, but he was exhausted and injured, and they all pushed him back down whenever he started up. They were waiting for us. As soon as we reached the narrowest stretch, they attacked from both sides. Arrows thick as a swarm of bees. Most of my men down before they had time to draw a sword. The carriage horses spooked, but one of them tripped and broke a leg. Otherwise, I'd have had to walk here. How did you escape? Lila's voice was thin but calm. Hit my head on a rock when my horse went down. That's how I wrenched my shoulder as well. He took a long drink from a cup a maid offered him. When I woke, it was all over. Men dead everywhere, horses scattered, a disaster. He drank again, avoiding looking at the throne or Rolfe. And did you actually see their majesties' bodies? This from one of the counselors. No, Avery said slowly. I thought I saw the Queen's green gown over beneath some of the mess from the luggage cart. Prince Bran had been riding, and I saw his horse dead on the road. But the king? The counselor, Lord Sefton, who was barely older than Bran, leaned in, eager, and Seeley felt a flutter of hope rise in her heart as well. No, Sergeant Avery said in a grim voice. His eyes flicked to Seeley, and she looked steadily back. I'm afraid I didn't see him, but I found this in the dust. Seeley's heart plummeted. Lord Sefton sat back, the shock and strain making him look much older. Sergeant Avery was holding up the griffin ring. The winged lion was fashioned from gold with emerald chip eyes that seemed to wink in the light of the room. Seeley's father, like every other King Glower, was given the griffin ring at his coronation. It was to be worn always as a reminder of the king's duties, and Seeley had never seen her father without it. She wasn't even entirely certain that it could be taken off. Rolfe had once told her that it was enchanted and could only be removed after the king's death. She had thought he was teasing then. Sergeant Avery was holding the ring out to Rolfe, but he wouldn't take it. Finally, the elder Lord Freen held out a shaking hand, and the sergeant dropped the heavy ring into it. A shiver passed through Seeley. Nevertheless, we'll send a search party, the emissary to foreign lands said in a brisk voice, to see if there are any more survivors or anything left to salvage. Of course, my lord, Sergeant Avery said, straightening. I'll lead the party myself. He looked at Rolfe now and started to get up, but Rolfe waved him down again. Thank you, Sergeant, Rolfe said. But first we'll have a physician look at your wounds. He sent one of the footmen for the castle physician and one of the guards to gather a search party, armed. That is a noble idea, Lord Emissary, Lord Fiend said in his quavering voice. If it is true they are dead, then it will be good if they can bring back the bodies of our lamented King Glower, the 79th, and his queen. Lila made a little mewing noise at the word bodies, and Seeley clutched at her sister's waist. She felt like she was in a nightmare and hoped desperately to wake up. Pogue Perry, who was hovering behind them, stepped forward and put one hand on Lila's shoulder and one on Celia's. His hands were large and very warm, and Celie was glad that Pogue had come to flirt with Lila that day. And of course, Lord Fiend went on, if it is true that the king and queen are dead, there are arrangements that must be made. Castle Glower cannot go very long without a king. Plans for your coronation? No, Rolf said. We must be certain that my parents are not alive first. Lila made another mewing noise. Celie felt tears slipping down her face and wetting the front of her gown. How could Rolf stand there and suggest that their parents might be dead? How could he? A sob burst out before she could stop it, and Pogue's hand tightened on her shoulder. Lila had both her arms around Celie, and now she bent and rested her cheek on Celie's hair. Tears dripped from Lila's eyes now onto Celie's cheek, and she didn't brush them away. I will do my best to find them, Your Highness, Sergeant Avery said. He stood up, and this time no one stopped him. Thank you, Sergeant, Rolf said. I am glad that I can rely on you. The physician had come, and now Sergeant Avery followed the man out so that he could be examined in private. The rest of the counselors clustered together, whispering and eyeing Celie and her brother and sister. Rolf stepped in front of the throne and cleared his throat. They all fell silent. Whoever did this must be brought to justice, Rolf said, his voice grim. I will be sending a full complement of soldiers with Sergeant Avery as soon as possible to look for my father and my mother, but also to hunt down— Your Highness, please, interrupted the emissary. Let us not mar this sad occasion with talk of revenge. This can only lead to more tragedy. Rolf stared at him incredulously. You don't think that an attack on your king merits retaliation? The emissary shook his head, sighing softly as though Rolf had disappointed him. Until such time as we can verify the fate of the king and queen, and until those who perished in this attack are properly mourned and laid to rest, there is nothing more to be done, he announced. For now, you are all dismissed. Rolf looked at him for a moment in shock. Then he stepped down off the dais and nodded curtly to Pogue, who bowed and moved back. Rolf put his arms around Lila and Celie, and everyone else left the room, leaving the three siblings to their grief.